I'll be the first to admit that I was kind of a weird kid. I saw my first horror movie when I was 6. My older brother, he was 12 at the time, he was just entering his rebellious stage. He was interested in anything and everything that our worrywart of a mother was against. Naturally, gory movies were at the top of that list, right next to Satan worship and child sacrifice and drugs and rock music. Yeah, our mommy dearest was a June Cleaver wannabe, a white picket fence stay-at-home mother, the sort of woman that cooked pies for Sunday school fundraisers in high heels and pretty dresses. Rob, my brother, in all of his preteen suburbanite angst, thought it was an excellent idea to show his little brother the godfather of gore flicks, Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast. He brought it into our room one day after school and locked the door to keep me from running away. We had a TV and a VCR in our shared bedroom. I remembered whining about how scary movies are bad, and Mom and Dad are going to get angry when they find out Rob. We got about halfway through before Mom burst into our room unannounced. When she saw what we were watching, she started screaming and howling in a way I've never heard before or since. She grabbed Rob by the ear and dragged him into the hallway, and she grilled him on where he'd gotten the tape. Turns out, since he was just 12 years old and neither looked nor sounded like he was 17, Rob had actually stolen Blood Feast from Blockbuster. Cue the screaming. He was grounded for 6 months. No friends over, no phone, no going out. He was to go straight to school in the morning and had to come home immediately after. And even I was inadvertently punished because Mom sold our TV and VCR and donated the money to church that Sunday. In spite of all that had happened, and in spite of the fact that I'd only seen maybe half of Blood Feast before Mom brought everything to a grinding halt, I was mystified. A few years later, when I was 9 or 10 years old, I became buddies with this kid from school who loved George A. Romero and John Carpenter. His name was John, and his mom went to church with my parents, who approved of our friendship because of that. On the weekends, I'd go over to his house and we would watch horror movies until dawn. Even though he had a huge collection, at the rate we were watching these movies, we were quickly running out of options. So we had to start walking to Blockbuster to get new ones. John was a real weird guy, even weirder than myself at that age, but he was a good friend and the only other person at school that adored movies like I did. We got along just fine, became best friends even. He drew some disturbing stuff, said he had had a lot of bad dreams, but I just chalked it up to him being a fan of horror movies. When he was a little older, John started writing weird, violently sexual stories about girls we knew from school. I got freaked out when he showed me, told him how much trouble he'd get in if an adult found his notebook. He promised to get rid of it. Didn't mention it again for a while. When he was 14, John's parents divorced. It was a nasty one. To make matters worse, he was caught right in the middle of it, ended up feeling guilty and unwanted. He grew quiet at school, spent most of his time there scribbling in his notebook. I was afraid he'd start writing those bad stories again, but I didn't bring it up when we sat together at lunch. And then one day, he just didn't come to school at all. I didn't see him for a week straight. I was beginning to get worried. By Thursday, I decided to stop by his house to see if everything was all right, but to my surprise, he was waiting outside on the front steps when school let out. He looked like his old self again. When I asked him where he'd been for the past week, he said that there had been a family emergency on his mom's side, and they had to drive a state over at a moment's notice. He said everything was all right now. John was at school on Friday and asked if I wanted to come over and rent some tapes to watch that night. We talked about the latest horror flicks all day, walked straight to Blockbuster after school. Between us, we'd seen nearly every horror movie on the rental shelf. What little we hadn't seen didn't look really appealing. I was about to settle on The Evil Dead for like the 5th time when John came over with a new film neither of us had seen yet. I guess I overlooked it the first time around. Or maybe it just didn't look very interesting to me. But we ended up renting it because it was a horror movie and because we were bored. For those of you who don't know, Angel Heart is about a private detective named Angel who is hired by the devil to find a missing man by the name of Johnny Favorite. The detective finds lead after cold lead because each person he interviews ends up dead. He gets mixed up with a young voodoo priestess who just so happens to be Favorite's daughter. There's an infamously graphic sex scene, and by the end of the movie it turns out that Angel is actually Johnny Favorite. Favorite sold his soul to the devil, lost his memory after an accident in the war, and the devil is just trying to collect his dues. Angel, or Favorite, races back home to find his lover/daughter dead, and that he's been blamed for all the murders. I didn't think it was bad, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking. On the other hand, John became totally obsessed with it. He wouldn't stop talking about Angel Heart. He raved on and on and on, singing its praises to anyone who would listen. That is to say, me. And for like the next 2 weeks, all I would hear is Angel Heart this and Angel Heart that. He rented it over and over again and would sometimes watch it twice in a single night. And just like that, John's strange behavior started all over again. He resumed writing those gross stories, this time in full view of teachers and other kids. He got caught and had all his notebooks confiscated by the principal, who suggested to his mom that he see a psychiatrist. He didn't care. John grew out his hair and attempted, unsuccessfully by the way, to grow a beard like Robert De Niro's character from the movie. When I spoke to him one morning, he demanded that I start calling him Johnny. I lost it and told him to shut up about Angel Heart. He stopped talking to me after that, even when I tried to apologize in the hallway later that day. Nothing. John apparently stopped bathing as well. Got to the point you could smell him before you saw him. Girls talked about him in hushed whispers when he walked past, and people just made fun of him until he pulled a knife on a guy, started pestering him in the cafeteria. After that, they just left him alone. It was like mentioning his name was a taboo. People would stop talking and give you that look if you did. Everything came to a boiling point one afternoon in September. School had just started back and I hadn't spoken to John in over 5 months. When I passed him on the way to history class, I was stunned when he stopped me to say hi. Hey John, how have you been?" I said. And he said, "I told you, it's Johnny." I glanced down at his shirt and saw the words Angel Heart. Nearly flipped my shit. That was the last time I actually saw John. Now, the rest of what I'm going to tell you is kind of he said, she said rumor. Most likely fabrication with some inkling of the truth. Apparently, John went home from school early that day. His mom said she didn't actually see him come in, only heard his footsteps on the stairs and the slam of his bedroom door. She thought nothing of it until she called him down for dinner, and he came to the table drenched in blood. John slaughtered a chicken with a straight razor in his bedroom and drew voodoo-looking symbols on the walls and the floor in the chicken's blood. She ran back downstairs intending to take him to a hospital when John attacked her from behind, cut her with a knife. She would have died if a neighbor hadn't seen the whole thing go down from their window. The police spent a long time searching for him, but John was nowhere to be found. Miss White recovered, but she and the entire community were traumatized. The neighborhood lived in fear for a long time, but eventually, John's story went the route of urban legend. Some people have theories that attempt to explain his whereabouts. Pretty popular idea is that he went crazy, ran off into the woods behind town, where he presumably died of starvation or the elements. I'm telling you this story all these years later Because of what happened to me starting the other night, I was out shopping with my wife. Wanted to grab a movie before we headed home. We stopped by the bargain bin. Lo and behold, there was a DVD copy of Angel Heart staring me smack in the face. Just seeing the cover brought it all back, all those memories. I wanted to watch it again, just to see if I could get some kind of grasp around what had happened to my best friend so many years ago. I watched it with my wife. It was a mistake. She won't stop talking about that damn movie. I found a book on black magic tucked neatly away in the back of the closet. Yesterday, I found a journal underneath the mattress. It was filled with page after page of these bizarre drawings, rites, and religious symbols. Today, I came home from work and found her drenched in blood, hacking away at a chicken in the backyard. I am actually terrified to confront her because I fear that I'll be next.